if you compare frozen food to produce that's picked off the tree or off the vine, it actually maintains the nutritional quality of what you're consuming. And you can also pick whatever it is that you're consuming a lot later. So it's actually ripening on the vine and you're not putting gases in it. And you're not picking things green before they reach that full flavor and nutritional potential. So there are a lot of benefits to it. There's also a ton less food waste, higher yields for the farmers. From a consumer perspective, it's always ready.
Welcome to Brands for a Better World, the podcast that brings you the stories behind the people and products building a more just, healthy, and regenerative future for us all. Tune in weekly, and together, we'll learn about why these better products and brands were created, how they're helping fix broken systems, and what you can do to support them. My hope is that you'll discover some new brands to love and get some sparks of inspiration that will help you live your best life. Hi, I'm your host, Gage Mitchell, founder of Modern Species, a sustainable brand design agency helping better brands grow to scale their impact. If you like this show, please help it grow by leaving ratings and reviews on your podcast app and by sharing your favorite episodes with your friends. Maybe this will be one of them. On this episode, I'm speaking with Rachel Drori, founder of Daily Harvest, about why frozen food was the trick that got her eating healthier, why she decided the direct-to-consumer model was the right path for her brand until recently diving into retail, how staying focused on their mission keeps her and her team pushing through all their challenges, her recent decision to hand over the CEO reins, and much more. We then wrap up with a rapid round question segment. Enjoy.
I'm Rachel Drori, and I'm the founder of Daily Harvest. Daily Harvest was created to help make it easier for people to eat more sustainably sourced organic ingredients every single day, because that's what we need for humanity and for a healthier planet.
Love it. And I was digging around and trying to figure out why and how Daily Harvest started, and I found some stories about how you realized that eating healthier food needs to be easier because you were struggling to eat healthy, just working all the time as a working professional, which I feel like we can all agree with and understand because we all probably get in that place, right? But for what I'm really curious about is how, of all the different healthy foods you could create or all the different types of products you could have focused on or whatever, how did you come to your first line of products? What was that process from the light bulb moment to launching your first line of products?
Yeah, so it was not as light bulby as you might imagine. I was working at Guilt Group at the time, and I was, burning the candle at both ends as we do. Right. And I realized I felt awful. And I was grabbing whatever in the pantry, stale birthday cake. I called it lunch. and I was just like, this is so bad. So this was a time when meal prepping was all the rage. It was all over everything. And honestly, I thought it was a little gross because by day 4, food is slimy. I just couldn't bring myself to eat it. And, I realized that frozen could be this incredible opportunity. And when I thought about frozen as a category, I was it's so challenging because people associate frozen with dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets and frozen pizza. And how am I going to get a customer that cares about their fruit and vegetable consumption to really go to the freezer aisle? So I realized that, one, I had to go D2C, but that's not what you're asking. But I needed to create something that showed people that this was something different. This wasn't what was, is traditionally in the freezer aisle. And in order to do that, I needed to show people something that they would really believe. And I always say, believe in cherries, because you can't argue with a cherry. You can't argue with a piece of spinach. You can't argue with a mushroom. It is what it is. It's how nature, intended for it to be. And you can't seeing it was going to be such a huge part of believing that this was something different, that I needed to have whole ingredients as the first thing a customer would see as the Daily Harvest experience. And that's how I landed on smoothies, because it was really approachable, but it was a format that I could, have somebody, open that cup and be like, there's real food in here. And it's a reaction that people still have to this day, which is awesome. And they're shocked.
Yeah. But it was also a great format for cold, right? Because you decided like frozen is maybe better than like prepping a bunch of salads and having them get slimy throughout the day. But if you're going to make something cold, like they could pop it in a microwave and make a soggy, lasagna or something like that in the microwave. But that's not that much more appetizing than that soggy salad. So a smoothie kind of makes perfect sense because people are used to drinking them cold already.
Right. It felt really approachable to people, and that's where it started.
Nice. So, and you also mentioned that you decided to go DTC at the beginning. So why did you make that decision instead of just looking for a bunch of local grocery stores you could stock in?
Yeah. So, one, I needed to make sure that people knew that this was something different. And when you're doing something different, if you kind of walk down a grocery store aisle in your mind, there's not a lot of places to talk about how a brand is differentiated or all the work that you're doing. And there's a package, but smoothie cup isn't that big. So I knew that I would really need to create a platform as well to tell people about sustainable farming and, why organic is so important and about biodiversity and about, how this all impacts human health. Otherwise, it was just never going to, the dots were never going to connect. So by going D2C, not only could I target a customer that I know would be interested in hearing about this, but I could also educate the customer on why Daily Harvest was so different. And then there are the practical matters that, when you're a new brand going into a grocery aisle with zero brand awareness, buyers aren't really willing to take a lot of bets. The freezer aisle is an expensive aisle to be in if you're thinking, as a buyer in a grocery store setting, and they want the things that are going to move. And taking a bet on a new brand, you're going to put it in the bottom right hand corner. You're going to take one or two SKUs, and so much of what we did from the beginning was make sure that we had enough breadth and depth in variety so that, the person who is love my Brussels sprouts and I want to taste my greens had as many options as the person that's if it tastes like a Wendy's Frosty, I'm in.
Yeah, that's cool. That makes sense. I mean, and I think at the time you launched, D2C was a pretty popular space to play in because you were also able to cut out a few middlemen and spend a little bit more money on that marketing education to acquire your customers and then ideally keep the customers with subscriptions too. So was that part of the motivation as well?
Absolutely. I mean, the landscape is very different now, but it was really easy to find the right customer, using all of the media options out there. And it just felt like the right time to do that format. Yeah,
it makes sense. I think it might be the last episode just before this one or something like that, but we're interviewing Alex Bayer from Genius Juice, talking about his decision to shut the business down. And a big part of it was just how hard the refrigerated or cold chain kind of distribution is and how limited the shelf space is and how, exactly to your point, grocery stores want products that are going to move, and they'd rather have one brand that they know will move with a lot of SKUs rather than have a bazillion tiny brands with one SKU. So Absolutely. A lot of that is still coming to play today, right?
It absolutely does. And that's why, we've just gone into grocery stores. It took us years to build enough brand awareness where we felt like we weren't going to have to, pull people in, but people would be asking for us and know when they saw our brand, what it meant, what it stood for.
Yeah, it's a good time to talk about that because I know that you've been pushing into a lot of new stores lately. I saw at least Target and maybe Kroger and a few others. So
Kroger,
that's
Costco,
super exciting to be making that transition, but also a whole nother business model. So what? Truly. And then you've also, since the beginning, started making a lot more than just smoothies. So can you talk a little bit about what that transition was like from smoothies to expanding the product line and then from D2C to moving into retail? What were the decisions and what was the process like?
Yeah, well, so we branched out of smoothies early because I knew if we stayed just a smoothie brand for too long, we would be the smoothie brand. And that wasn't the goal. So we started with soup. We expanded to overnight oats, flatbreads, harvest bowls. Now we just launched pops and pasta. And the mission of the brand was really always to help people eat as many sustainably sourced organic fruits and vegetables as possible. And to do that, you have to have offerings for every time of day. And, as far as the future goes and where we're headed with retail, there's so much more ground to cover. Our customer isn't super accustomed to going to the freezer aisle, which is why we started with D2C. But, right. We are building habits and behaviors as we expand. And only 15% of people buy their food online, buy their groceries online. So, 85%, if our mission is to help everyone eat more sustainably sourced organic fruits and vegetables every day, we've got to address the 85% that don't shop online. So there's a lot of work to do, but it's a really exciting time for us.
Yeah, that's really cool. Since you were growing pretty fast through D2C, did you always have retailers like knocking on your door saying, hey, why don't you carry that over here? And you were like, not yet. Like, was there...
Absolutely.
Did you time this?
Yeah. Sorry, it's a conversation that we've been building those relationships since the brand first started. And we were just really disciplined and said that we wanted to have, a certain percentage of brand awareness before we did, for all the reasons that I mentioned. We had a few times when we were going to start, and then there was like a pandemic. It was definitely like an interesting debut in retail. But we're there, and we're super excited to be there, and it's going really well.
I mean, that's great from a strategic standpoint for multiple reasons. I think a lot of brands try to rush into retail maybe too soon and expand their footprint too soon, and then they can't support all those stores, or they don't know if they have the messaging dialed in or the customer base in that region or whatever. And then maybe they struggle and get kicked off the shelves or not renewed, or they won't get expanded on shelf. And then also another reason is just having multiple business models, like multiple channels to manage, is expensive and complicated from a logistics standpoint, et cetera. Right. So the fact that you knew you wanted to wait, build up that customer base, build up the brand awareness, build up the portfolio, build up the systems, and then expand was a smart decision. How did you, you didn't start in food, so how did you know that was the right decision?
I think that was mostly intuition, just in speaking with people about, how one expands a food business. I learned a lot by just kind of doing what made sense intuitively, and not having a background in food, like not growing up through CPG, I actually think really helped in that respect, where I didn't know how people did things traditionally. So I had the opportunity to just, do whatever made logical sense. And it felt like, the way that we built the brand and the way that we still continue to have this huge fan base of customers that we can launch new collections and new SKUs with, have them help us iterate and innovate, and then, send the winners to a grocery store setting. It just really works.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you kind of mentioned that you didn't know what people in the industry typically did, so you just did what was logical. And I think exactly to that point, a lot of founders follow their emotions, and it's exciting to get into more doors. It's exciting to get offers from retailers. It's exciting to expand nationally instead of just being focused on a region. And I think they take a lot of those opportunities or go and pitch those opportunities for that excitement, to feel like they're successful. But to your point,
absolutely,
it's also like complicating their path to success, right? So it's not very logical. So I like the way you put it. And
even 10 years later, we're still changing behaviors, because customers who are looking for fruits and vegetables aren't necessarily going to the freezer aisle. It's, the freezer aisle has evolved a lot since we launched, but you still got to build those behavioral changes.
Right. So speaking of behavioral changes, you mentioned this a little bit before, but the whole mission is about getting people to eat more sustainably sourced fruits and vegetables. And I know that you're an advocate for organic and actually helped some farms transition to organic. And I've seen you talking a little bit about regenerative too. So can you talk about where that passion for sustainability came from?
Absolutely. So I was always a foodie growing up. I was a rower growing up, and that actually informed a lot of my knowledge about health and wellness and food in general. And then when I went to college, I was studying politics, and I stumbled upon this class that was the politics of food. And I was like, this seems really interesting. And I had this amazing professor. And it became such an area of concentration for me because I was fascinated by the food system and the history and the policy, and kind of learning all of those components that have come together to build the food system that we have today was really illuminating, and part of why I really wanted to do things differently with Daily Harvest. Frozen is a huge benefit for sustainability, but also, doing the hard work and working directly with farmers to transition from conventional to organic, to invest in regenerative, to do all the things that, as a consumer, we don't often know about. And that's why the education piece was so important. It's like, if you're doing it, but you're not talking about it, it makes it a little hard. But, to make sure that the fruits and vegetables that people are consuming are actually the best that they can be grown and having the most impact possible on humanity and the planet just became such a passion of mine through that, in college.
Yeah, that's cool. So you talked about one of the benefits, obviously, core part of your business model, frozen. When you talked about developing the products, it was for, taste or quality. That way things won't get slimy. But what are some of the other benefits of frozen, both from a sustainability and quality or nutrition standpoint?
Yeah. So if you compare frozen food to produce that's picked off the tree or off the vine 3 days later, right? Like if you're buying from a farmer's market and it's just picked, that's great. Most people don't have access to that. And when you compare something 3 days off the vine to something that's frozen, it actually maintains the nutritional quality of what you're consuming. And you can also pick whatever it is that you're consuming a lot later. So it's actually ripening on the vine and you're not putting gases in it. And you're not picking things green before they reach that full flavor and nutritional potential. So there are a lot of benefits to it. There's also a ton less food waste, higher yields for the farmers. From a consumer perspective, it's always ready. So when you think about, the human sustainability side, instead of grabbing, that bar again, you can have something that's made of whole, sustainable, organic fruits and vegetables in just about the same time. And that's really powerful.
Yeah, that's great. I think the one area that's complicated, of course, is all the extra energy and refrigerated in grocery stores or distribution or other things like that. And I know it's a challenge, of course, from even just a shipping online standpoint, right? Like some of the brands that I try to support online, you go to buy a product and it's you want to buy $30 a product, but it's also $50 in shipping costs. So that's a challenge. But how do you... And all those reasons why the food is better and better for farming makes total sense. But where did that kind of shipping kind of question pop into your mind?
Yeah. So the way I kind of see it is whether you are driving to the grocery store and driving home or a truck is driving to you, we don't have a better way to get food. So it's not perfect. It's absolutely not perfect. But, at the end of the day, the freezer aisle is going to be there whether we're in it or not. And, when you compare that to food waste or to the benefits of, nitrogen fixation or whatever it is, there aren't any studies that compare it to apples, but, I feel really good about the progress that we've made and the impact on, a different part of the supply chain where, again, not perfect, but it feels like progress.
Right. Yeah. That makes total sense. And I know that
we also focus on
food
sustainable
waste
materials in our shipping. So, everything that we make is either fully recyclable, curbside, or compostable.
Right. Yeah. And I know food waste is such a big issue because of the fresh supply chain, right? A, like maybe grocery stores reject stuff because it doesn't fit their specific standards, or B,
Yeah.
maybe by the time it gets to wherever it's going, it's bruised, it's damaged, it's broken, or not at the top quality, and the shopper in the grocery store is going to give it a little pinch and realize it's a little loose and soggy at this point and not buy it anymore. So there's like lots of problems with fresh, right? So I think frozen solves so many of those problems, and a footprint of a food business is at least like 70% often. I don't have the exact numbers, but like 70+% is about how the food is grown. And then the other things like packaging, like we obsess with sustainable packaging, myself included, but really it's only like 3 or 5% or something like that of the total footprint of a product. So,
so that's why we focus on the agriculture, really focus there. And then, the rest is, that's where we're focused on the progress.
Right. And I love that you're also trying to help support farmers transitioning, because I know the organic movement's been growing for a long time, right? But the number of, or the organic acreage hasn't grown as significantly as the demand for organic, which means most people are trying to import organic from other countries, which, that's great too. But what about this country? We don't want all these chemicals on our land here too. So you helping farmers like transition is great.
Yeah. We have to. And that's why we've been investing. I mean, we have transitioned thousands of acres of land from conventional to organic. It's a 3-year process. It's really hard for farmers to take that leap because they're not paid for organic during that transition usually. And they don't necessarily know who's going to buy it until it's done. So by partnering with the farmers, we've been able to kind of take that fear out of it and, help support them during that transition, buy their food, create a market for it, educate customers, and also focus on biodiversity. The farmers that we work with are so passionate about what they do. And they're also like, we geek out on cover crops, and we geek out on nitrogen fixers and all that stuff because, having that direct relationship with the farmer allows you to actually create food that helps support their businesses and the greater good when it comes to soil. So it's this big, benefit from having deep relationships and supporting farmers.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. And organic's been a movement for a long time, but regenerative is a little bit newer, only newer to us. Obviously, it was like indigenous practices for a long time, but you mentioned cover crops and some other things that are part of regenerative. Can you talk about like your mix of farms that are organic versus organic regenerative and what your priorities are there?
Yeah. So, we definitely have a mix, because if we're all organic, it's very challenging. Actually, just a fun little factoid for you. For all of our SKUs that are in retail, we've really had to focus on organic because there still is not that place to explain to customers what transitional organic is. And honestly, you can't really talk about transitional organic because the organic lobby doesn't like that. So we're huge fans of organic, but there's still a lot of customer education that needs to happen. And, vast majority of our food is organic. And then we have, I don't know the exact percent today, but, at some points we've had 10% of transitional organic, where, the goal is to have that, front and center for the consumer, to help them understand that, guys, unless we're transitioning land, organic's not going to get cheaper. Our soil's not going to get better. We really have, this is a group effort, but we did kind of draw a line in the sand where we wouldn't transition Dirty Dozen because that's also challenging for consumers.
Yeah.
So.
Or maybe, I know you're saying you wouldn't transition the Dirty Dozen, but maybe what you mean is you're not going to source. But you might help a farmer transition. You just can't buy those products while they're transitioning.
100%. Sorry. Okay. I definitely misspoke there.
Yeah. And then how does that regenerative fit into the mix? Is it a goal of yours to shift all the farms to regenerative organic over time?
Yeah. So it's actually really interesting. We're doing a study with an almond farm right now where we've actually quartered the farm. And we're doing organic, organic regenerative, conventional, and conventional regenerative. And we're working with, I forget the name of the university, but we're working with the university to actually measure the integrity of the soil and the nutrition in the soil over 5 years to be able to say once and for all, like, where should we be investing and what's the impact? So that's been a really exciting project that, we're really looking forward to getting the results from.
Yeah, that's really exciting because I know a lot of the regenerative movement folks are excited about the idea of regenerative not only being better for the planet, better for the farmers, et cetera, but also more nutrient dense because the soil is going to be healthier and richer. So it'll be nice to see the results of that study and hopefully give them some proof that it is the right path.
Yeah, and it's really just been farmer specific. There are some farmers who are on board for it. There are some farmers who, are interested. So I think this study will actually really help for those farmers that are interested, but, want to see the science.
Right, yeah. And there's movies out like Kiss the Ground and Common Ground that hopefully are helping some of those farmers understand the benefits because whereas organic maybe can help them get a higher pay price, which might be good for them and hopefully prevents them from getting some cancer from chemicals or whatever. But like from a farm financial sustainability standpoint, it's not like it's still a bit questionable, right? It's still a hard business, but regenerative also has extra benefits because you're getting more out of the land because you'll have more diverse crops and your soil will be more productive. So from what I've heard, like regenerative seems like a no-brainer, and then getting people to go all the way to organic can be a little bit more of a challenge, but it also makes sense in the long run.
Yeah, and we've been partnering with a lot of organizations to help with that education and, investing in underrepresented farmers and, working with CCUF and AFT. And, there are a lot of relationships that we have really invested in to help with that education.
Yeah, speaking of the underrepresented farmers, is that I think you have a grant program or something like that I saw on your website where you kind of award some prizes. Is that the underrepresented farmer program?
Yes, exactly. So, we work with American Farmland Trust to find, land that is maybe at risk, and they help us find farmers that are interested in transitioning or working on regenerative agriculture from underrepresented communities, mostly on the West Coast. And we help put it all together for them, help the organizations kind of work together to invest in farmer livelihoods and also do something great for people and planet.
That's amazing. I love it. You're doing so many great projects to push agriculture forward, which is awesome because I think it's so important. Food is life, right? There's so many old quotes that we could pull up, let medicine be thy food and food be thy medicine.
That's my favorite one. That's my favorite.
and soil is life and all these kind of things. But without the ability to grow good, healthy food on this planet, we don't stand a chance of continuing our species, let alone all the other species we're probably killing through agriculture. So it's so important to focus on this. And also food is just delicious. So when you make food the best way with all the right nutrients and, micronutrients and elements, minerals, stuff like that in there, it just tastes so much better too. So it just makes so much sense from every way you slice it.
I'm like, the planet's going to be just fine, guys. The issue is humanity's ability to live on the planet that is at risk.
That's what I say.
The planet, the ball of rock and magma, will exist without us. It will be better off for it, but
Yeah. There was a famous designer Milton Glaser, who did a campaign called The Planet's Dying or something like that, with a planet with a smoke coming off of it. I can't remember the graphic, but when I saw that, I'm like, but that's not the truth. The planet is going to go through all of its cycles with or without us. It's us who will be extinct here in the near future if we don't get our shit together and actually take care of the planet so that we can, survive on it.
Right. But couldn't have said it better myself.
So I love that all the work you're doing to try to make sure that we've got a chance at a good future.
Thank you.
So, You mentioned a little bit ago, like as you're kind of moving into retail and stuff, the pandemic. And I know the pandemic was incredibly hard on so many businesses. And I think we're still actually starting to see some businesses shutting down now. That really that process started during the pandemic, like whether it's all the restaurants shutting down or retail chains or whatever. It's just been a lot of brands trying to dig out of the hole of the pandemic and just can't quite get there. With that said, from what I read, you seem to boom during the pandemic. So can you talk a little bit about why you think that is and what your trajectory has been since?
It was not easy by any way to look at it. But we did see a significant uptick in people buying their groceries online. That 15% of people that buy groceries online spiked up to 26%. And we had something that like solved such a need for people in that moment. And, post pandemic, it definitely normalized back down to 15%, which was something that we weren't sure if, it would happen. Like had these habits been normalized, or were people going to revert? People reverted, we're just excited to get to that additional 85% now. Through grocery stores.
And I think part of the pandemic boom could have also been like a lot of, I run a brand design agency, and a lot of our clients are all regenerative, organic, healthier, et cetera. And what I saw is a lot of them actually did well during the pandemic in terms of sales, because people also shifted to cooking more at home or eating healthier food, because we were also worried about our health, that all of a sudden we kind of focused a little bit more on it. So I imagine also being like a fruits and veggie forward, whole food, like healthier option was kind of a big boom too for you during that time, which theoretically didn't slow down after the pandemic, but I don't know if I looked at those numbers. So I know the online shopping kind of went back to in retail for the most part, but have you seen that kind of like health focus continue?
I haven't. I've only seen those numbers grow, but I don't know how to like normalize for the fact that like people are just becoming more educated and more health focused, and like the pandemic's impact per se, but like absolutely that was part of it.
Yeah. So you had to some degree just like, I don't want to call it luck because that's not exactly true, but like just good timing, right? You happen to have a kind of online option that was healthy, and the pandemic just happened to trigger a couple things that helped you boom since then.
Yeah, and then, I think being frozen and fruits and vegetables and, all of the things, having a brand that really resonated with people. But yeah, a lot of it was timing.
And you said it wasn't easy. What was like the hardest part about it? Because I know a lot of, again, our clients or people we've had on the podcast, the biggest struggle was like supply chain and inflation kind of stuff. What was it for you?
It was really challenging from so many perspectives, but supply chain and inflation, I'd say the number one challenge for us was all vaccines were shipped on dry ice. And that's what we used to ship. So all of a sudden we had zero supply and a ton of demand, and you can, if you've taken economics, what happens. So we were just really transparent with our customers, and we were like, we're so sorry. We can't ship this week again because there's just no dry ice. I spent like days researching how we could start making our own, and the craziest conversations. The other thing that was really challenging was the people part of it, because you had people that were at home who were used to, like, we're social creatures, and everybody was kind of going through their own journey. And I think just keeping people really motivated at a time when we had so much demand, trying to keep people focused on like, we're doing something great for people because this is like the option right now, and this is what people need from us, was the only way to get that done.
Yeah. It's so funny how the challenges that pop up are often so random and unexpected. Like I had some clients that like, we can't get glass jars for our product anymore. They're like 6 months, a year out or whatever. I had a client whose cargo ship lit on fire while transporting their product, and then they couldn't, fulfill a bunch of orders for a long time because they had to wait for another batch to be made. And it's just like every business had something different, but like dry ice,
Yeah.
like who would have thought when you were
Physical
building this
goods are
business that would
hard.
be the linchpin?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yep.
Well, I'm glad you survived it, and it seems like it's been going really well since. I think I would guess that one of your benefits as an entrepreneur has been your background in marketing before launching, because I know talking to so many founders, they not only enter CPG with no experience in food or supply chain or whatever, but then they usually also entered like they were an accountant or something else where that skill is going to come in handy to some degree. But for the most part, when you launch a CPG company, you are a marketing business. Like that's totally. 99% of what you do, So that must have had some benefit. But what do you feel like have been your steepest learning curves moving into this food space?
What you say is absolutely true. So much of CPG is the marketing side, connecting with consumers, having that authentic relationship. Absolutely. But, for me, it was really about bringing in people with the right expertise and experience. So I'd say like the steepest learning curve for us was really on the shipping side. We did just talk about it, but, we were the first D2C frozen brand besides like Omaha Steaks.
Oh, yeah.
So we had to do everything from scratch, and there was so much trial and error, more error than trial, that it was just difficult.
Wow. Yeah, I bet. So how did you, since it was pretty new and you said you hired people with the right experience, who had the right experience if this was so new? Like, did you hire someone from Omaha Steaks, or did you just hire someone who knew shipping at least but had to figure out the frozen side?
Yeah, I definitely tried to hire someone from Omaha Steaks, to be clear. Was unsuccessful because people are like, what is this brand and what are you trying to do here? But hired people with, similar experiences. Nobody had done exactly this, but people with experience in frozen and or mostly supply chain and shipping. And it was, it's just, how I built the business. I had to bring in people who knew how to do the things that I didn't.
I mean, that's just a general smart strategy. And I think most strong entrepreneurs would say the same thing. There's so many, again, back to quotes. There's so many quotes about like, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, or, there's different things like that where it's about like surrounding yourself with the best people so that you can just let them do what they do instead of having to like dictate it or direct it all the time, right?
Absolutely.
Speaking of challenges, like we talked about the frozen ice or the dry ice challenge, but I know one of the other challenges that happened a couple of years ago now was your big recall that you had to do, which, man, there's so many things we have to deal with as entrepreneurs or as businesses, right? And then to like have something as random as some new ingredient being put into something that is like zero fault of your own, but it's something now you have to deal with. Like how was that emotionally for you? Like, it's hard being a business owner, but it's even harder when you have to deal with these problems constantly. And then a big problem like that must have been super stressful.
Yes. It was incredibly, incredibly challenging. And, particularly for the consumers who were impacted, it was right. So much. And, our team, myself, like worked around the clock to get to the bottom of like what was going on. And we were trying to also at the same time, we had this authentic relationship with our consumers. We were working so hard to communicate incredibly transparently and effectively with everyone that it was just this like, honestly, I think I like looking back completely blacked out because it was just full contact. But it was absolutely a learning experience, and we've continued to evolve and improve as a business. And we're 2 years out now. We've built a ton of trust with our customers, new and old, and we're just really focused on the delicious fruits and vegetables that we make. And, we're trying to advance our mission. We've talked a lot about that, but to make it easier for people to eat more sustainably sourced organic fruits and vegetables daily.
Right. Yeah. And I think there are some problems that you can't predict, right? Like there was no existing evidence or whatever about like issues with that specific ingredient. So it's not like something you could have said, you know what, maybe let's not use that. Just kind of, you got to be the guinea pig on using that ingredient, and it was a challenge. Maybe I think I saw something that you said, like a practice you're putting into place now is just trying not to be the first mover on new ingredients anymore, right? So that's one thing you can put in place, but you can't predict everything. Things just happen. So sometimes when that happens, like, it's stressful to get through it, but the downside is then the brand trust gets a little bit eroded. I know you handled it really well. You were really transparent. You were communicative, which I'm sure went a long way. But I'm curious, like, do you feel like you're still digging out of that whole little bit of the brand trust, and what are you doing to kind of rebuild that?
Yeah, I mean, we're just really focused on our mission and continuing to do what we've always done. We've talked about some of the things that we do and continuing to live that mission and to, help people eat more fruits and vegetables every day. It guided us incredibly well in the beginning, and it continues to guide us. And, I think people really appreciate the authenticity and the transparency that we've always had with our consumers. Again, like I go back to that cherry, there's so much value in seeing that cherry and being able to hear the stories of, the extra work that we put in on the agricultural side to help people feel better and to, help us live longer on a healthier planet. That's really just where we're focused.
Yeah, that makes sense. You got to just be able to put some things behind you and keep moving on with the mission, and, put some practices in place to try to not have the same mistake. But, there's going to be other stuff that pops up, other challenges. And as long as you're focused on the mission, I feel like that's what keeps you getting up in the morning. That's what keeps your team motivated. That's what keeps customers coming back to you. And I find that brands like you, who've been vulnerable and transparent through the process, rebuild that trust so much quicker than brands who like try to sweep it under the rug, act like it never happened, hire a PR team to spin everything, or, whatever. Like if you just kind of own it, that almost strengthens trust rather than having to repair it. Like shows that you really do care about the customers.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Cool. So I know you're like, what is it now? 9 years into the business, something like that. 10 years into the business now. So I know that's like a benchmark that a lot of businesses try to get to, in the CPG world, maybe like at some phases trying to like exit by 5 or 10 years. Some more challenging categories are like, I hope to be profitable by 10 years, et cetera. But you're at the 10-year mark, which is exciting. And I know you're kind of in a transition phase. You just, I think a few months ago, handed over the CEO reins. So what drove that transition for you, and what's your role? What's your focus in the company now?
So I recently moved into the chair role, where I'm going to help to, continue to guide the company strategically, continue to work on the brand. It was a really difficult decision, but after 10 years as CEO, I really needed to make a lifestyle change.
Right.
I had a bit of a health scare last summer, and for me, it put a lot of things into focus. And I saw the company through the explosive growth, the pandemic, a recall, and a launch into retail. And I had this incredible number two who I could elevate with so much experience in expanding our retail footprint that the stars just kind of aligned for the change.
Yeah, it's nice to have somebody internally who knows the brand, knows the systems, them, what they're capable of, their values match, et cetera, to be able to put into place.
Absolutely.
I don't know the statistics on success of hiring from the outside for some of those important roles, but I've seen a lot of brands struggle when, let's say, the founders exit and move on, and the board or whoever hires a new CEO. Often those CEOs only last a year or two because they're coming in maybe into a new category, high hopes, maybe little experience in the space or whatever. And they do their best, but they just didn't know the business as well as somebody who was in the business. So it's super not lucky, but great that you had someone in the business you could elevate to that role.
Yeah. And Ricky and I have such an incredible relationship. We talk multiple times a day, and, it feels easy. So
That's amazing. So with that said, what do you feel like the future is looking like? I know you obviously, as we talked about, started with the smoothies, expanded the product line, went into retail. What's next? What's the future look like?
Yeah, there's still so much to do. You know this better than anyone, but on our mission that we're just going to continue to try to make headway and progress there and help people eat more of the good stuff. And in order to do that, we're going to continue to expand our retail footprint. There's a lot more wood to chop there. We don't want to go too fast because, there's still a lot of behavioral changes that need to happen, but being really slow and methodical and leveraging our brand awareness and, what we've done with the brand thus far, I think it's gonna be great.
I love that you say that too, because I feel like one of the biggest problems with CPG over the last 5-10 years or whatever has been moving too fast. Like, so once venture capital money started pouring into the industry and everyone started looking for those near-term exits and bringing on investors who pressured them to grow, 5x, 10x, whatever, every single year, it just got crazy, and everyone was trying to grow too fast and stretch themselves too thin, and then end up either eroding trust, eroding the product quality, or making big leaps that they weren't ready for, and then making big mistakes that they have to dig themselves out of. Like, we constantly hear of companies doing like 700 million in revenue with loss of 70 million. It's right. Like, how do you be at that scale and lose that much money, right? Like, you should have some things dialed in by the time you get to that scale, but it's just because people are moving too fast.
Right.
And they haven't
and we've always
built
been
the right
pretty
products or
disciplined
business
about that, trying to grow not only sustainable agriculture, but also a sustainable business model. Right. We have values aligned investors that, understand what we're trying to achieve and believe in our mission, but also, appreciate our pace.
Yeah. Speaking of the values aligned investors, when I was poking around doing a little research, I noticed you had like quite a few celebrity investors. How did that come about?
It actually came about really organically. We have supporters like Serena Williams, as an example, who was a huge fan of Daily Harvest and reached out to us and wanted to be a part of what we were doing. A lot of stories like that is kind of how it happened. And I just feel really grateful to have incredible celebrity advocates for all the important issues that we're addressing.
Yeah, it's becoming more popular for celebrities to be taking like a bigger role in a company, like be a co-founder or, be the face of the company or something like that. And obviously a good business is a good investment. So a lot of celebrities need somewhere to put their money. For your celebrity investors, are they mostly just a good place to put some money in a brand and product they believe in, or are they helping advocate and promote and, taking any sort of bigger role in the company?
So we don't have any sort of like endorsement type deals with any of them. They really are truly like people who were fans of the brand, friends of the brand, who wanted to invest, and any promotion has just been authentic love. Like, Serena posted, I think it was last year or the year before, getting ready for the Met Ball. She had her smoothie with her, and, Paris Hilton's been like a huge advocate and a really good friend to the brand.
Nice.
So
that's really cool. I guess that just goes back to like, if you create something people love and people can believe in, then you don't have to go out and pitch awkward paid relationships. Those, endorsements come to you, right? To some degree.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing some of that story. I'd love to transition into a little bit of a rapid round-ish. It's not incredibly rapid, but sort of rapid.
I'll do my best.
But first off, since you make, healthy food focused on fruits and veggies, I have to ask, what's your favorite indulgent treat that maybe would not fit in the Daily Harvest brand?
A lot of them. But so I have a true love of all things matcha.
Oh,
and
me too.
I just like, if it's matcha, I'm in. But matcha mochi is my number one favorite, and matcha chocolate. Like it can't be near me because then it's gone.
Yeah. I was just going to mention matcha mochi when you said you love matcha, because I literally just bought some matcha mochi yesterday, and anytime I see a matcha flavored something, I just have to buy it. It's like matcha flavored ice cream. I also just had a matcha flavored bubble tea or something recently. I've got like 4 brands of matcha in the cupboard. Like it's delicious. I like it. And good for you, right? Oh, and one thing that, because I'm used to the green tea matcha that everyone's used to, right? But a friend at Wild Orchard Tea was unveiling at Expo West this year his black tea matcha, which was a first for me, but it was super delicious. And I keep meaning to go to his website and buy some. So if you're a matcha fan, maybe check out the Wild Orchard, which would also fit your values. He's regenerative organic too. So
I will absolutely check that out.
Cool. Okay. So who's a celebrity that's not currently invested in Daily Harvest that you'd love to be a part of the brand in some way?
So I think following the theme of like organic fans of the brand, I would say Adam Scott. He actually just did an interview with GQ and mentioned Daily Harvest.
Nice.
So I would love to have him involved. I think that authenticity is so important. And it also helps that I'm a huge fan of Severance and Parks and Rec. And also one of my life goals is to play Cones of Dunshire with him.
That's hilarious. I love it. Well, hopefully he's listening and we can make that happen for you.
Go on, Adam.
But it's cool that you're already on the radar. Like sometimes when I ask a question like that, it's like a big pie in the sky. It would be hard to get their attention, but hey, if he already loves the brand, that's going to happen sometime soon. It's not if, but when.
Fingers crossed.
Nice. Okay, so what's the best piece of advice you received? And that could either be like all time, something you've always quoted in your mind, like for decades, or it could be just something recent.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you a piece of business related advice that I received early on that we've already kind of discussed, but I think we'll just bring it back. It really, that business is all about the people you surround yourself with, and bringing on really strong mission aligned people and treating them really well, and then giving them space to run is kind of the magic formula.
I love that. For a little while, I had a sticky note on my desk that flipped the common phrase of it's not personal, it's business. And I had a sticky note that just said, it's never just business, it's always personal, or something like that. Just because
it truly is.
Even if you're working with a company, you're working with the people in that company, right? Like it's always going to be personal. There's no decision that you can make as a CEO or entrepreneur that doesn't affect somebody, whether it's your customers, your employees, your supply chain. So I feel like I like that mention of it's all about the people, just because it's so true. Like without people, like there would be no customers, there'd be no business, whatever. So if we take care of them, they'll take care of the business.
Right. And it's obvious, right? But then when you get stuck on the branding or the product development or the supply chain, right, it's so easy to be like, oh, this is so hard, but it really just comes back to the people and investing in them.
I love it. I wasn't planning on this, but you just mentioned investing in them. What's your favorite way to invest in your people?
So I think just being really empathetic and authentic, and getting to know people, not just at work, but also, understanding what's going on in their lives and supporting them as whole people, has just always really guided my leadership style, and it's really worked for us as a business.
I love it. And it's kind of how you support your customers too, it seems like.
Yes.
Just, again, when we talk about the recall issue or other things, it always seems to go back to the mission of just helping people eat better food and support better agriculture, et cetera. So it does seem that you're a very people-driven person, which I appreciate. Yeah,
absolutely. You have to be.
So who's an impact-driven leader you admire, and why?
So I think if I were to pick one, I think I would say Mackenzie Scott. She really is thinking about philanthropy in a different way, and she's focused on addressing systemic inequalities by really listening and trusting local leaders, kind of on the same theme of believing, trusting and investing in people. Yeah. And it's driving meaningful change in the communities that she's investing in. So,
yeah, I love that she kind of goes a little bit rogue with it too. Like I haven't done a ton of research to validate this, but I think she's like, sometimes we'll just like send people a check without them having to apply for a grant or anything. She's just like, I like what they're doing, and just like cuts them a check, and they're like, oh my God, I just got this huge check from Mackenzie Scott. That's amazing.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's really cool. So since this podcast is called Brands for a Better World, what does a better world mean to you?
So many things, but I'm going to try to be succinct here. A better world is really one where sustainable farming practices flourish and organic food becomes really accessible. We talked about this a lot, but we need to nurture the soil to nurture humanity. And we can increase access to nutritious organic food at the same time as decreasing dependence on chemicals and monoculture. The idea of a better world is really about a world where we're more in harmony, and I can feel better about what my children are inheriting.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Yeah. Cause I think the hard part about sustainability for some people is for a lot of the practices, maybe not the immediate gratification of just grabbing that bag of Cheetos or driving around in your, gas guzzling car or something like that. Like maybe there's some dopamine emotion or kind of tied things there, but with some sustainable actions, it's about resisting some of that or investing in yourself long-term or investing in the planet long-term. Like one of my favorite, I don't know if it's a quote or a statement or whatever, is like, be willing to like plant a tree that you yourself will never get to sit in the shade of, kind of is a lot of sustainable practices, right?
I think that.
Some of it affects us right now, but a lot of it is about setting up a better future for other people. So I like that you kind of mentioned that, kind of living in harmony and creating a space where future generations can thrive too.
Absolutely.
It's beautiful. Well, we'll wrap up there. I appreciate everything you're doing to kind of push sustainable agriculture and healthy food forward, and just that kind of authentic and people forward way you run your business, taking care of your customers and your team in every way you can. So thanks for doing all that you do to make the world a better place. And thanks for carving out a little time to come on the show and share your story.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Thanks for listening. To learn more about Rachel or Daily Harvest, visit daily-harvest.com. If you like this show, remember to help us grow by liking, reviewing, and sharing. If you're new here, don't forget we have over 100 episodes in the archive. Some might be called Evolve CPG, but it's the same show, so dig in for more goodness. If you consider yourself an impact-driven professional, join me over at impactdriven.community, where we're supporting each other's growth as impact leaders.